Hey, friends. Doesn't it seem like forever since we did this? Because we had our December one was early. My goodness. Okay. See me looking over here because I'm letting people in. I am muting everybody because even if you think your environment is quiet, microphones pick up everything. So everybody is getting muted as they come in. Okay. Hi, everybody. Okay, wait, I gotta let other people in. Okay, I'm gonna keep kind of watching that to let people in. Hi, everybody. Welcome. If you are new here, hi, welcome, first timers, welcome, old timers. So, quick overview of what we do here. This is your time to ask me any questions you want. You can ask about anything you want. There's nothing that's off limits. If I don't know the answer, I will tell you that I don't know the answer. I'm pretty good at making stuff up, but I'm also really good at saying I don't know. The way that this works is you will, depending on how your screen is set up, you will find your, is it the reaction, everybody? I can never know from every time we do this which one it is, but you're going to look for the hand raise button thingy. Jenny's up there, Lucero, Patricia, Cindy, everybody up there with their hands raised. So that is how you get in line for a question. Sometimes we have folks in who are on tier 2 on Patreon, which is a different payment structure. So if you're in line and you hear me call on somebody else first, it's because they have like priority passporting on the airplane. But for the most part, we go in order. If you have more than one question, I do ask that you ask one question and then get back in line. And that just lets people who have questions make sure we have enough time for everybody to ask at least their first question before we get into second questions. And as we get bigger, that becomes more important. Yeah. Officially, we're signed up for an hour, but we always go at least an hour and a half because I cannot stop when we're in the middle of things. I will ask that if you do have a question, try to be in line with your hand up by like no later than 1/4 to or 10 to the hour, wherever you are. Sometimes what happens is when I've been talking for a long time and we've been together for a long time is I forget to look at the clock. And I keep asking questions for as long as there are hands up, which sometimes means I talk for 3 hours, and that is not good for anybody. Okay, I think that is it for housekeeping. Let's go. Jenny, you are first, my friend.
Hi, nice to
Hi.
see you. I wanted to say I've been just loving watching the Q&A sessions. I can't often be there in person, but I do watch them back, and I just find it so useful. There's always more than one thing that just feels so relevant and so helpful. So just, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Today is good timing for me because I'm coming up to a big anniversary, and I wanted to ask about grieving for multiple people, especially when it comes to getting into like grief hierarchy or, kind of comparisons, unhelpful things like that. I've lost your picture, Megan.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yes, you're there. I see you. Yeah, so it's going to be in early February. It's 20 years since my mom died. I was 17, and it's just over 2 years since my daughter died in a medically preventable incident. And her death is the reason that, like, she's what brought me here to this group, and she's the reason that I'm kind of just trying to get through the days. And, like, that's the death that has really obliterated our lives. And I'm finding it really hard to find the capacity and to be honest, the patience to acknowledge my mom's 20th anniversary that's coming up. It just feels there's some kind of resistance for me in even acknowledging it. And yet I also feel like I need to, which is why I wanted to bring it up today. There's a part of me that wants to grieve for her, but I don't know how, because we're so full up with our daughter's death. And I think maybe just one more little factor in that is that I think I struggle with the fact that when our daughter was sick, and when she died, we didn't have any maternal support because my husband's mum was in the late stages of Parkinson's. She then went on to die exactly a year after our daughter in the same hospital. So we've had no mums for this really hard time in our this real big catastrophe. And I just feel, I think if I think about my mum now, all I feel is this very unfair, I realize unfair sense of resentment that she wasn't there when we needed her, and neither was his mum. And where were the mums? And to both my husband and I have much older sisters who are old enough to be our mums, who were also very caught up in their own grief and weren't there for us either. So we've had this feeling of like a vacuum where the maternal support should have been, and now I just struggle to kind of find where's the how do I frame this for myself that I can still acknowledge this 20 years. I think that's my long-winded question.
So I have a clarifying question here, so I understand. That pressure to acknowledge your mom's 20-year date, is that an external pressure and your own internal pressure, or just your own internal pressure?
Yeah, so there's nothing happening in the family. We did it 10 years, we met and scattered her ashes, but now everyone's having their own kind of just logistical time and no one can get together. Yeah, so it's purely
so this is all internal battle.
Yeah, it is.
An internal battle and endless mind loops, right? Of like, here's this important number, right? And I feel like there's a responsibility that I do something because it is an important number, and I don't have the bandwidth. And part of the reason I don't have a bandwidth is because you're dead and you weren't here for this important thing, right? So it's just like layer after layer after layer after layer. So I am going to tell you to let yourself off the hook. Numbers are made up. That 20 is a big deal because it ends in a 0, or 25 if it ends in a 5. That is made up.
Yeah.
That's made up.
Right.
This is going to sound really blunt, but she won't be any less dead next year at 21.
Nope.
Right. If you do not have the bandwidth to mark this number, even though the importance of the numbers is made up, still the effect of that is that we put some importance on them. So that's not right or wrong, it just is. But to be able to let yourself off the hook and say, the fact that this is 20 feels important to me. And at the very same time, I don't have the capacity to really dig into what does 20 mean to me? Because right now what 20 means to me is you weren't here when my daughter died. Right? Yeah. And maybe, the phrase that comes to my mind is, this is what 20 looks like. Not, damn it, I need to be doing something and I resent the fact that I have to do something, all of this stuff, but this is what 20 looks like.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to write that down. Yeah.
Yeah. That feels much more kind and much more freeing and much more open, because you're not having to fight what is. And anytime we're fighting what is, it's just making a mess in the brain.
Yes. And I think a big part of my struggle over the last few years is fighting the universe, in terms of why haven't we had that support we desperately need? Why are these people
because it's not fair.
No, it's not fair.
It's not fair. We're not, when we're talking about stuff like this, we're not talking about logic and reason. We were talking about longing. We are talking about need. And that is not logical. That is biological. That is relational, right? Maybe this is what 20 looks like. It looks like me howling to the world how much I feel I've been failed by mothering.
Yes.
Whatever that is, right? That this is what 20 looks like. This looks like me flipping y'all off for not showing up in the ways that I
Yep. For
right?
all the reasons. Yeah,
For
exactly.
all the reasons,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
You don't have to plead your case. You just have to feel it, right?
Yes. Yeah.
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 Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
I feel like anytime you find yourself getting caught in those loops, because this is not a magic, like, okay, now it's resolved and you're not going to get yourself in these loops again because sorry, yes, you will. But to
Yep.
come back to that statement of this is what 20 looks like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
When I'm doing that thing where I'm trying to battle what is, this is what 20 looks like.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I needed to hear. Yeah.
Good.
Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome. Potato, hi. Nice to see you.
Hi, good to see you too. Um, First of all, I want to acknowledge what what's going on in LA. Well, still going in LA, and I am really sorry. And my heart is with everyone of there.
Thank you.
And uh, I just the state of the world is it's so scary, and not having him is like I feel alone,
Yeah.
like my daughter and me against the world. And I know I have a community, but it just feels so lonely. And I have a question. Um, and my question is not to debate if mediums and psyches are real or not. My
Mhm.
question is more related to like what I'm a spiritual person, but I don't follow any religion. And since he passed, it's been like I've been connected to something bigger, right? And it will never cross my mind to reach for a medium or a psyche before. Like it just sounded crazy to me. And I have. And it's been sometimes great and sometimes not so great. And but every time that I do something like that, I feel that I'm betraying my beliefs, you know? It's like
Mm.
I feel so stupid after. It's like, how can I just believe in these things? Like, that's not me. That's not rational. I'm a science-based person. Like, it's not
Yeah.
that I don't believe in a higher power, but I just don't.
Yeah.
It will never cross my mind that this will be something
Yeah.
that I will be interested in before, you know?
Mhm.
Uh, just have a question like, what am I doing here? Like, what is this? I just don't recognize myself
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. There's so much in that, right? I so resonate with who am I? Like, this is not stuff that this is stuff that I would have dismissed or laughed at or, whatever, as a scientist, as a logical person, like, as sometimes I feel like we think like no intelligent person really believes in a more than this, right? And so I want to say that first, that dueling aspect of I need this for something, and what is wrong with me that I'm doing this, right? That loss of who I thought I was, like that push pull, really, really common. Doesn't mean it's not a torment, but it is something that a position that a lot of folks find themselves in. Yeah. Something that can be helpful to remember is that you've never had to do this before. Your previous self wouldn't have known what they would do in this situation because they hadn't lived it yet. This you, here and now, is still logical, is still reasonable, still believes in science, right? That self has an addition to it now where this longing, this need to feel like this didn't just stop, is showing up in ways you didn't expect, right? Honestly, it doesn't matter whether you believe in it or not. It's what am I longing for and what does it give me? I remember, God, like 25 years or so ago, I cut my hand. You see this, like this is as straight as this finger goes. I promise I will bring this back to you. But I was rage sharpening a knife. Don't ever do that, friends. And I cut through my hand and blah, 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 all of this stuff. And like 5 or so years later, I noticed that I was doing this in whenever my hands were at rest, mirroring each other. And I was in a checkup with my doctor who I loved, and I was like, watch this, jing, jing, jing. My hands naturally, like my hands do this. And she said, oh, that's just something your brain does. And I was like, but how cool is that that's just something my brain does, right? So bringing this back to what we're talking about, like whether what you get back from a tarot reader, an astrologer, a medium is real or not, if it is just part of you, your brain, their brain intersecting with something, some pattern that overlaps, it doesn't matter where it comes from. It matters that it feeds something, that it nourishes something for you. We don't have to prove where it comes from or whether it's logical. The feeling of I was needing to feel like there is more than this. And meeting with that person gave me that. Meeting with that person did not. Right? Being able to get underneath the action and the medium, no pun intended, but like the medium of the connection, and recognize that what I'm looking for here is evidence that we are still connected, or that things didn't stop. Like you want to sound like you, and identify your own longing in there. It's like, know what you're looking for, and know that this self here and now has had to expand to include more things. Yeah.
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 And
I think I'm sorry.
I think you'll find that a lot of people who may have not leaned into those kinds of tools or practices or people or services before do lean into it. I remember when Matt died, I went to a whole bunch of free ones, and they were just so pathetic. I won't take up a whole bunch of time talking about them. And then they're just so pathetic. Like, I'm thinking of someone whose name starts with B, and somebody would say, my person's name starts with B, and she would go, they say hi, and then she would move on to another letter in the alphabet. Like, okay. But somebody had recommended somebody else to me, and I was talking to the guy, and he started talking about this practical joke that Matt used to do, like this physical humor thing. He's like, why do I see this? And he would like describe, I see a person doing this action. And I was like, that's a practical joke that he used to play, blah, 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 not important. But whether that person that I spoke to was actually channeling an energy or not, the fact that he picked up on something that was so specific and was able to mirror it back to me, that's amazing. Right? So this is like for anything, right? Like, you don't want to throw out what an interaction means to you if it feels like it answers the longing. I don't think we have to generalize to the entire profession, right? Like, if your car broke and you took it to one mechanic and they sucked, and another mechanic and they were brilliant, we're not going to ditch cars and mechanics forever. We're going to say, I needed this, and this person didn't give it to me, and this experience did. Yeah. Looking for that longing.
Yeah.
Under. Yeah. And I want to come back to what you said about this bizarre timeline that we're in, and the cascading fuckitude, and what that's like, knowing that you have to live this without your person. You don't have your person to talk to about it. You don't have your person to help you figure out how you're going to survive or be of service or keep your sanity in things like this. Like, there isn't that us. And when things go sideways, us is what helps us survive. And when you don't have that, and I heard you say, like, I have friends, I have community, but there is something about the intimate other. And that doesn't necessarily have to be a partner. That can be a best friend, that can be a sibling, that can be a parent, but that intimate other that helps you stay anchored in chaotic times, and helps you feel like no matter what happens, we have this, we have each other. There's a safety in that intimacy. And so for you and for anybody else who is feeling like, what fresh hell is this? And how am I supposed to live this without you? That's a real thing. That's a real thing. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Patricia, you are next, my friend.
Thank you. Well, you really touched me with that end part. And it's interesting that I'm following Lucero. So I need some help. I'm in the anniversary of my first anniversary of my husband's death. And he was very interested in the afterlife. And we talked before he was ill and died about, whoever died first would come visit the other. And then after he was ill, we talked about how, or I said, you better come see me, help me.
Mm.
But he hasn't.
Mm.
And I feel let down. I mean, it feels real for me. I really need that connection.
Mm-hmm.
I had this goofy dream last night, and all it was I walked into the house in the dream. And, sometimes I would walk in the house while he was alive and say, boyfriend, call out to him, and he would go, yeah. And I heard that in my dream.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a year, and that's all that's happened. And I feel my expectations are high, but they're high.
Yeah.
I want connection.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear that so often. Like, everybody's always talking about signs and dreams and visitations and feathers and all of these things, and I get nothing.
Yeah.
What? So many layers in that. It's not just calling out to the beloved and saying, how could you abandon me after this? It's really calling out to life, calling out to the ways that we understand everything and saying, how could you leave me alone in this? Yeah.
Especially these days, like you were just talking about. I mean, the feeling of not feeling safe or
yeah. It makes me think of a friend of mine who's a great writing teacher, talks about writing about grief and loss and these sorts of things. And she's one of three children. She's the only surviving daughter. One sister died in childhood and one sister died as a young adult. And she talks about not being able to feel the connection or remember things because two of the people that held the memory are no longer there. Like, this absence, basically, I think is where I'm going, that there is an absence and a lack of connection and a lack of relationship that she is longing for and can't find. And what I find so interesting about the way that she approaches that is that she gets into dialogue with the missing, with the empty space. I don't know if I'm describing this very well or not. It was clearer in my head, but this sense of like the space around the not getting the messages, the space around not hearing from you, right? Can I connect with that? Let me see if I can root this in a better example. Like, if you did writing or meditation or just a reflection to throw out there to your husband, to the world, to the more than this as you know it. I needed to know you were here. And if you are, I have missed that message. What shape does this message take? What shape does our connection take now? Because I gotta tell you, I'm not seeing it. Right? You want to sound like you and not like me, but I'm like I guess my point here is like, let's lean into what's missing and see if we can connect through that. Right? There is a shape of you, a message, a something that makes me feel like I'm not alone in this. And you're not giving me what I need, and it's making me feel more alone. So how are you here? Is there a way? It's like leading with the not knowing, I guess, is the move here. And I don't think that doing that will necessarily be the magic that unlocks the messages or the signs or the feeling of the presence, but it's like addressing the elephant in the room, addressing the grief of not having what you expected to have happen. Right. I think also sometimes our religious traditions and our pop psychology and these sorts of things give us a view of what connection after physical form should look like, feel like, what the signs are, what it should look like, all of these things. And when we don't get that, as you said, like my expectations are high. When we don't get that thing, we think that the connection is no longer there because it's not showing up in these forms. It's not showing up in a way that I recognize. That it makes me remember there's something in the Christian tradition with Mary that says, exchange hearts with me, my lady. I can't see the world that you see it. So exchange hearts with me so that I can see the way that you see this world. And you know, that popped up from the random resources of my mind of like, I don't understand the form our connection is taking. Help me see it. Help me feel it. Help me find it, even if it doesn't show up in 3 crows passing by the full moon at sunrise. Right? What form does this take? And where can I listen for you? Right? It's engaging with the longing and the disappointment and the expectation and trying to find that step outside of it. Right? Yeah, it's such a tricky thing. It's so difficult. It's so painful. I don't know if you've experienced this, but sometimes, you know, like people will send you a message or call you and leave a voicemail and be like, your husband came to me in a dream and he said blah blah blah. Like, first of all, don't do that shit. And second, like, he's coming to you and not to me. Like, what is this?
Exactly right.
Right? Like, stop. First of all, do not pass along your messages to somebody else because it's just rude. Yeah, that stuff drives me crazy. But it that sort of like grinds salt into the wound of like, you're having dreams about them and they're not showing up for me, right? Signs are neutral. A feather that comes across your path is a neutral object. It is the meaning and the relatedness we make with it that makes the symbol, that makes the message, right? So I think it gets tricky when we try to interpret what signs mean for other people. Your husband came to me in my dreams and he said for me to tell you this because this is what's happening. No, bitch, you're just saying what you want to say and you're doing the cover of my dead husband to tell me, right? Like, this is what I always want to say to those folks. Why are you telling me this? So I just wanted to throw that in there too, that sometimes hearing that other people are having connections and signs and visits and all of these things with somebody who you feel like hasn't shown up for you, that's difficult. And I don't have an answer that's going to make it all better, but I will say that there is something. If there was something more than this that felt stable and solid to you before, it is still there and the form has changed. And the work now, the practice now is to ask, what form does this take now? Yeah. Yeah. And I love that dream. I love that dream you had. It's never going to be enough, right? It's never, that contact, that connection will never be enough because it's trying to stand in for form and it can't. Yeah. But it is okay to demand more. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Cindy, you're up.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you being here. I'm listening to your book, and I just want to say I'm really sorry for your loss. So this is going to be really hard, but I lost my brother in October, just a few months ago, October, and I'm 53 and he was 43. He was my baby brother, and we were really close, and I really loved him. And he died of a heart attack that was related to substance abuse. And I like completely destroyed and shattered. And I find myself just really wanting to know, like, is this what it feels like? Like I'm miserable all the time. I'm shattered. I'm like raw. I feel like I've been skinned alive. I'm so unbelievably sad and crying all the time and afraid and wondering how I'm gonna live life without him, and all the things. It's like all the miserable, hellish feelings, like every minute, all the time. Well, I mean, I have some moments that aren't quite that bad, but it's just really, it's the most unbelievably painful, overwhelmingly painful, terrible thing. And I just want to know I just want to know if that's what it feels like. And it seems like it's going to feel that way for a while. Like it's not going to just not, it's going to be like months and months and I'm going to still feel that way. Or does it feel like that it's going to go away anytime soon? That's my question.
Yeah. Okay. New loss is exactly like what you just described. Being flayed alive, no buffer, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to come back to this moment. All I need you to do is make your exhale just a little bit longer than your inhale, right? Just the tiniest bit longer. And what we're doing when we do that is we make this moment a little bit more tolerable. Yeah, because that overwhelming pain just floods the system. And one of the things that the human brain does is it panics in the moment and it also panics in the future. This is a really unfortunate thing that our brains do, right? We start taking how hard this is and moving it to tomorrow and moving it to next week. And I will tell you what, where you are right now cannot withstand 5 years of grief in this minute. You can't, right? The sort of sphere of existence gets really small in these early days, and that's okay. What I mean by that is you can't afford to wonder about the future right now. The biggest future you can lean into is 5 minutes from now, 2 minutes from now, 30 seconds from now, the next second, the next second, the next second. I don't know how you're going to live the next 5 years because you're not that person yet. Yeah. What we want to know is, how do I care for myself in this minute? How do I find ways to feel this pain right here and right now? It sucks.
It's so painful.
It's so painful. It's horrible.
It's horrible.
Mhm.
And like the rest of the world is just going on with their lives.
Mhm.
Like, like this didn't happen. Of course, it didn't happen to them.
That's right.
Uh,
Yeah, that gap between the world you live in and the world everybody else lives in, like it's got so many layers to it. Like, how dare you keep going when the world has been destroyed? And we know, just as you said, their world wasn't destroyed, right? You're not living in the same world anymore. And I think that that complete universe change, like it's just there's just such a big gap there, right? It's why people from the outside don't really get it and can't really get it, because they're no longer living in the same world with you. And why you feel like, how are you grocery shopping, right? How are you making jokes in like how, right? Because we don't live in the same world anymore. Yeah. And this is why, like, so much of It's Okay, so much of my social media stuff is about like that, those early flayed open days, because nobody likes to talk about how much it fucking sucks, how much it's not fixable, how much every single day is a marathon.
it's like every single day is like running a marathon through
That's
hell.
right. That's right. And so it's not about how do I make this stop? How am I going to survive this for the rest of my life? It's not about that. It is, this is a marathon through hell today. How will I make it to the next moment? It is taking those moments when you said, like, not every moment is like this. It's taking the moments when the fire hose isn't quite so full and intense, and taking that moment to say, have I eaten? Have I had water? Have I moved my body the way that my body is able to? What are some things that I can do to help myself survive when that fire hose comes back on? Yeah. So much of what we say to people in these early days is about a life that will not exist for quite some time, right? Think about the future. Remember, no, I want you to shrink down your horizon line to here and now and this, right? What does my organism need in order to withstand this today? I will tell you that it will not always feel this intense and this sharp. For some people, that's not a comfort. So ignore it.
It is a comfort. It is for me.
Yeah.
Because it's just the worst, hellish, terrible,
It
unbearable.
really is. It really is. And I want to say again that you can't afford to wonder about what it's going to be like in 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, right? We don't know. You're not that person yet. Okay.
Right.
You can't afford to put your consciousness into a future that hasn't arrived yet, because we need all of you right here. We need all of you right here, tending to yourself and caring for yourself in the best ways you possibly can. And that is how you build that later self who can withstand this, right? It's not by suppressing what's happening. It's not by skipping ahead in the story. It is by here, now, this. Sometimes my horizon line needs to be to get from 8 a.m. to 8:45 or 8:02. What do I need to be here with this and to care for myself the best that I can? Yeah. And some of those tools, right? Because those giant emotions, those horrendous, terrible moments that you feel like your entire being is going to shatter into 8 million pieces. It's like this is when trauma tools are really helpful. Whether you identify with having survived trauma or not doesn't super matter, but the tools are really useful, because trauma tools are the ways that we help our nervous system come back into this moment instead of being carried away by pain. Right? So trauma tools are those grounding things. The one that's always in your body is making your exhale a little bit longer than your inhale. Seems like it's stupid and it won't help, but all you're doing, your goal, your job in those moments of massive, overwhelming pain that threatens to blow up your entire being, is to help your nervous system calm down and find something solid, right? Lengthening your exhale helps your nervous system switch into calm instead of panic, right? Feeling your feet on the ground, if that's something your body's able to do, that there's something solid in my world when it feels like there is nothing solid anywhere. Yeah. Another trauma tool that can be really useful. I'm going to back up for a second. All of this stuff that I'm talking about is not to make things suck less or hurt less. It's about helping yourself survive in the moment when the moment feels unsurvivable. Yeah. So I don't want to get those things twisted that like do these 4 really simple things and this won't hurt so much. No. Do these things when it feels like you can't withstand it for 1 more minute, because it will help your body withstand it for 1 more minute. Okay. Lengthening your exhale, putting your feet on the ground and feeling that if that's something that's available to your body and your space. Looking around the space that you're in and counting all of the orange things. Going through the alphabet and thinking of a word for each letter in the alphabet and then doing it backwards. Right? Those tools aren't meant to fix your feelings. It's meant to help this container feel those feelings, be safe inside what's happening, not get carried away to the future where we can't afford to be. Yeah. It's giving yourself an anchor. So knowing what things you can go to, you can reach for when you are feeling like you're about to be exploded. Knowing those things instead of having to think of those things can be really helpful, right? This is what I mean when you're in those slightly calmer, less sucky moments. There aren't going to be any moments that fully don't suck, but in those less sucky, slightly calmer moments, being able to breathe and to know for yourself, this moment feels less horrendous. I feel like I can breathe a little bit. I feel like I can move a little bit. Okay. In this moment, is there anything that I might set up for myself or practice for myself or a sticky note that I can post for myself because I know that that fire hose is going to come back on? And what message can I send myself? What can I set up so that I can come back here where there's a little bit more space? Yeah. That's the stuff that's under your control, is here, now, and this. How do I care for myself when there is a moment of relative tiny bit of peace, less suckage? How can I help myself survive this right now? Yeah. That's why it's okay, and I think it might also be in the How to Carry journal, but that sort of behavior and experience mapping. Can't remember what it's called. But anyway, it's those charts of like, I did this and this made things feel worse. I did this and this made things suck just a tiny bit less, right? Starting to be curious about that stuff. It sort of takes you out of the storm in a way that you can observe it, right? Without being carried away by it, right? If I had a few moments of relative calm or peace or rootedness today, what were the conditions that allowed that to occur? Had I eaten? Had I spoken to somebody? Had I read a certain book? Had I listened to somebody's voice? Like, what are the conditions that cause those moments of slightly more peace? And can I get greedy for those? Right? You know that in those moments of relative peace, that grief hasn't gone anywhere. It's just that it got more inhabitable. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
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 Thank you.
You're welcome. It's a really, really sucky time. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mary friend. Hi.
Hey, Megan.
Hi.
First, I want to start by saying how grateful I am. And this is, I know you were answering a question like you always do, but I just really appreciated how you said engaging with the longing. That just feels very refreshing to my heart, because we're almost coming up on 1 year of my late dog being gone. So I need to read my question. How can I continue to be patient with tears? Because they randomly will just come. And while also remembering other happy things going on in my life. You know, my dog and I, my late dog and I, we had so many memories together, which is such an amazing gift. And my additional dog, Retta, she's wonderful. But sometimes the tears will just catch me off guard. And I just keep telling myself, just feel it and don't question it, and on to the next thing eventually when you're ready for it. But one thing I'm trying to work on is just be gentle with myself when the tears randomly come up, because they will catch me off guard. So I want to just kind of, I don't know. I think, yeah, you just help me with that part, because it's like, do I embrace that? Because I'm like, okay, I know this is a natural response I'm having, but like, do I embrace? I don't know, maybe not.
Yeah.
And
why I'm grinning here, which might, if it might seem odd, but what I'm remembering is when you first arrived here, and how challenging it was for you to allow yourself to feel anything.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that, but I remember that.
Yeah.
And that expansion of your own tolerance for your own being, how much that has grown, how much kindness and patience you have let yourself grow into over the year or two that you've been here.
At least.
Yeah, at least, right? I think back to that self who would not have let herself cry at all and would never think to ask the question of how can I show up more tenderly when I do cry. Like, wow, what grace you've learned to give yourself.
Well, I didn't grow up in an environment where I felt like I could do that.
Yeah.
And maybe I misinterpreted it, but that was maybe the impression I got from people around me. And so it's like, okay, that's what I've been used to, and now it's like, okay, and now we can focus on the center that I found and stick with it and just keep making progress. And that's where boundaries and all that fun stuff comes in.
Yeah, all the stuff that we've talked about over the years. So to come back to your original question of how do I find patience for the tears that come up? And I wonder if when they come up, there are a couple of different things that you might say to yourself. One is something like, and you want to sound like you and not like me, but like, I have learned so much about being tender to myself. Right? Because there's something about meeting that moment that you have learned so much about being tender to yourself. The fact that you can ask that question, how do I do it more? That's amazing. So when those tears come up, it might not be, oh, I really don't want these. How am I going to be more patient? Right? It might be, wow, I've learned so much. Yeah. It's okay to feel like I'm bumping up against the edge of my patience today, no matter what I've learned or how I've grown. Like right now, this is not well timed. I cannot have patience with this because I have shit to do. That's a different conversation. That could be like, do I feel like I have space for this right now? And if I don't, then I'm going to make a date with my future self to come back and revisit this with the tenderness that I deserve. Right now, though, I need to focus on this other thing, right? That you get to be in relationship with your own emotions. They don't have to just run the show, right? And that's different than suppressing your feelings, right? Suppressing feelings are, I never want to feel this. I am not going to feel this. Like, no, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, whew, that love and that connection just hit a tender spot for me. And I would love to cry my head off right now. However, I'm in line at the DMV and this is not the best place for this. So I am going to do what I know about grounding and compartmentalization so I can face the task at hand. And when this task is done, I will come back myself and ask myself what I need. Right? The moment might be past by then and yourself is like, no, I'm good. But it's the coming back to it that matters. Right? It gets easier to compartmentalize a big emotion when you have the body and the heart memory of coming back to yourself. This is too big for me for the space that I'm in, but I'm going to come back to you and check in. If you come back and check in, then you start to trust yourself. Yeah. So depending on the environment in which those tears arise, that may determine how you engage. Do you have the space to be amazed at how tender you've become?
Hey!
Right? Do you have the space to say that, or do you not have the space to say that? And then you need to make some other decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the last thing I'm going to throw out at you, because I know that you sometimes do your 2-color pen exercises because we love those, but you could ask yourself that same question. How do I find more patience with this part of me? Who is the yelling in there? Whoever that is, I'm going to mute everybody again. It's so jarring to have yelling when we're like having a good conversation. But that 2-color pen, for folks who don't know what the 2-color pen exercise is, it's a creative writing exercise where you, as the person with the question, has like a green pen and you answer the question with a different color pen. I don't know why it works, but it does. So it's like you're interviewing yourself and the other part of you gets to answer with the other color pen. I don't know why it works, but I always find it really useful. So asking yourself that question, Mary, with your blue pen, how do I become more patient with my tears? And letting the answer come with the red pen and just see what you find. Right? I
like that a lot.
Yeah, it's such a good one. I don't recommend that for everybody. If you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm never doing this. This sounds really stupid. Mary and I have known each other for a long time. She's been coming for a long time, and we've used that specific experiment before, and we know that it's been helpful. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking that is the dumbest thing ever, then don't use the tool. If you're thinking I would try that, give it a try. You don't always get answers, but you often get responses. And that's an interesting place. Yeah.
Thank you, Megan.
You are welcome. Joanna or Joanna?
Joanna.
Hi.
Yeah. I want to start by, this is my second time being here live. And last time I got so much help for heading into the anniversary, which was a couple of weeks ago. And it was very effective, the guidance that I got from you. And also just like, I was so moved by reading what was in the chat after I talked to you. I just couldn't, I didn't realize how I wasn't feeling seen or heard until I was seen and heard here. So I just want to thank you for that. Sorry. I hope this wouldn't happen, but
You're in a good place for it.
yeah, I am. I just hit the year mark, and what's happening now is that the cognitive and memory issues that came with the grief over the last year are coming back to bite me at work. And so I had this day where I realized I'd forgotten something important and made a mistake, and as a result there was this snowball effect affected so many people, and it was such a stupid thing, but like in the moment it just felt so huge, and I had a panic attack, which I have tools for that, but I could not access them.
Mhm.
And I it was just, anyway, long story short, because of that, my supervisor at work asked me to reach out to the faculty and employee assistance program. And so I did that. And the result was that they set me up with this counselor who was lovely. And she had some great advice. But what I keep sort of, I don't know whether this is like my brain wants me to grieve correctly. And so I'm perseverating on this idea that she at the end of the conversation, after sort of convincing me that I'm doing, the mistakes I've made and the things I'm forgetting are expected and that it's okay. And she said, she told me about an experience she had losing her sister. And it all felt very appropriate. It wasn't like she was making it about her, but she ended it by saying, have you done anything to begin establishing your new relationship with Colleen? And I was like, what? Like, it's not the first time I've heard of that concept, but I didn't know there was work to do.
It's more homework for you.
Like, I'm doing all the work. I got the journal, I got the book, going to therapy. But she talked about some things that she had done to rebuild a relationship with her sister. And in the moment, because it was a good meeting, I felt it made me feel slightly hopeful, but the result has been this kind of, why can't I figure this out? Why can't I figure this out? And I really appreciated what Patricia said too, because that's been on my mind. Like, do I need to, and also, was it Lucero said about, how can I connect? Why isn't she coming to me in my dreams? Do I need to go to a medium? Would that be crazy? Am I crazy for thinking any and all of this? And, I feel like there's so many people who knew her who will say to me things like, oh, I feel her all the time. She's with me, right? She's always on my right. She's right next to me on my right, and I just feel her. But and they'll say things like, but I think it's because I meditate and I'm very spiritual. And I'm like, I meditate and I'm very spiritual. I don't understand.
The meritocracy of the afterlife.
Right, exactly. And I'm just like, and then I think, okay, well, Colleen had a lot of friends. Maybe she's just really, really busy giving all of them signs because she had so many people, and she's going to get around to me. But she was my bestie. Why isn't she hitting me up?
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of feeling like, what is this work I'm supposed to be doing to rebuild a relationship with someone who literally isn't there to build with? And I think that I might have some anger around this as I'm expressing it that I didn't know I had, but I'm just feeling like, what more do you want from me?
Yes.
To come up with this new relationship. All I feel is big empty space. And I feel so much like what Patricia said, like, you promised you would haunt me. You promised. We didn't know she was going to die, but we talked about it.
Yeah, but you pinky swear on this shit. If you go, you are coming back.
Yes. I will be pestering you and I will make you laugh every day. And I read the book called Signs that people say to read, and I looked for signs and I asked for signs. I asked for pennies. They say to be specific. And we had a story about pennies, and I asked for pennies. And then like 2 days later, read a New York Times article that said, here's the reason you're not seeing pennies in circulation, because nobody's using them and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, why did I ask for pennies? I'm doing everything wrong. Like, I just can't. I don't know how to build a new relationship with her because she's dead.
Yes.
I think
First thing I want to point out is you asked for pennies and you actually got pennies. It's just you got a story about pennies instead of
Oh my God.
so you did actually get pennies. Just saying.
That's so funny.
Okay, so let's back up and unpack all of this stuff. I fucking hate homework assignments that make you feel like it's your fault this hurts so much and it's your fault that you're not feeling connected. That is such a prevalent piece of trash, especially in like the spiritual world and books and like the meditation light sort of world of things. Like, she's having a hard time reaching you when you're this sad. If you could only find a place of calm, she'll be able to come through. But you're basically just throwing a bunch of static at her. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Mm.
Right? So the reason that I'm not feeling connected is because I'm having too many negative feelings or any feelings at all about the fact that they're dead. And that's why they can't come back to life and visit me the way that they're visiting you because you have your shit together. I'm sorry, I've met you. Right? So it's that thing where like the meritocracy of the afterlife. I like that little phrase that my mouth threw out, but like, if you do all the things right, then you will be blessed with feeling like nothing bad has happened. So you've basically built your meaning system into a reward system that winning means that you're not sad anymore. Like, I don't understand that math. I don't understand that. But it is something that shows up for people so often. Like, look, I am a good student. I will follow the rules. I will do whatever you ask of me. Just show the fuck up. Right. Mm-hmm. So this on the back foot spiritual relational deficit that we're in. And if only we weren't, we would be getting that nice, lovely balm of feeling connected the way that other people apparently are. It's this, why am I not included in this? I'm a good person doing all of the right things. And why am I the one who has to work harder? Mm-hmm. It's just such a crappy mind prison to be stuck in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing I will say is you are not failing and you don't have to try harder. Okay. You don't. Just because somebody else has found ways to feel connected or to feel rooted does not mean that you are failing if you try those things and they don't work, or if you're too tired trying everything else to try one more new thing, right? Everybody has different paths to the mountaintop. Yeah. It is engaging with that gap. Like, how dare you not be more clear with me? I thought we were in this together. Like, yelling at the empty space is a connection with the empty space. Yeah.
Yeah, that is really helpful, actually.
Yeah. It lets you be who you are and where you are and tired.
Yeah.
Angry and sad, instead of trying to goosing a system to try harder when you are already trying harder than you possibly can. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
You are allowed to resent the people who are lording their sense of connection over you.
Thank you.
That is rude.
Yeah.
Rude. It's also okay to say things to people like, I'm glad that feels of comfort to you. It's hard for me to hear that. I would love to talk about something else.
Okay.
Yeah. They get to have their beautiful sense of connection. We don't want to take it away from them. We don't want to tell them that it's not real, because who the hell am I to say that that's not real? Maybe you are experiencing that. Maybe that is what I don't know. And it makes me uncomfortable to hear the details of that connection and that story. So I'm going to ask that we don't talk about that. Yeah. You get to have boundaries around other people's beautiful things. Yeah. Yeah. So being angry at the empty place, knowing that you don't have to work harder, understanding that other people get to find solace where they find solace, but they don't get to lord their connection over you.
Okay.
Boundaries are always the thing. And then going back to the work stuff, I'm really glad that it sounds like your workplace recognizes that you deserve support and not shaming and correction, right? To the best of their ability. It does suck that the cognitive stuff lasts so long.
It really does. I mean, I had a meeting today that we have every month, and when I looked back at the minutes, it was all from the last time, it was all new to me, and I'd written them. I was just like,
yeah. Yeah, there's an autopilot in the brain that is fascinating and kind of scary. Like, clearly some part of me wrote all that shit down, but I don't actually remember being there. Yeah. So the things that the cognitive impacts affect, some of this can be like, okay, I hate that this is happening, but it is happening. And I seem to go to meetings. Part of me is present, but I look back and I don't remember being there. Right. So are there ways that I can sort of do damage control for myself around that? Do I need to have protein before I go into a meeting? Do I need to try to schedule meetings early in the day because I feel like I'm more present then? Like, what accommodations can I make for myself? And what accommodations can I ask for where appropriate, right? It just keeps you from wrestling with what is. What is that you're not all here right now. Right? So how are we going to support you in the not here-ness, right? I think about like ADHD and executive functioning. One of the things that grief can do is really twack your executive functioning. It doesn't necessarily mean you have ADHD, but it's like the same component. That ability to sequence, order, compartmentalize, focus, take action that needs to be taken, like all of that stuff. Bye. Right? So some of the tools that we use to help people manage ADHD can be helpful in helping deal with the cognitive impact of grief, right? Timers, reminders, post-it notes, figuring out my mind seems to be a little bit more clear when I've gone for a walk before the meeting or when I go for a walk after the meeting, right? What helps me show up in the ways that I need to show up to the best of my ability? Yeah, just that little bit of agency of like, can I find a way to work with what's happening instead of being blindsided by it all the time? Yeah, sometimes just that tiny bit of agency can keep you from the panic attack stage.
okay, yes, that's really, I would never have thought of any of that. So I thought I was just happy that I'd shown up, I guess.
Yeah,
but
I mean, we can celebrate that. Totally celebrate that. Right? Because that's a feat. Yeah. That is an accomplishment to care about anything else from your world into the other world. And yeah. But if given that you do need to be there and that mistakes can cause downstream difficulties that you're aware of and that you care about, because some people don't care, that you care about, what are the supports that you need in order to be less likely to make mistakes, to absorb the impact of mistakes that are going to happen, and doing that sort of self-research study around like, what are the parts of this work that seem to be the most impacted by the cognitive stuff going on in here, or the executive functioning glitch, whatever it is. And is there anything that I can do to make those things better or mitigate any possible damage that might come from them?
Okay.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Just to go back to, I love that you asked for pennies and you read a newspaper article about there not being any pennies. And like, babe,
that I missed it too, because in a way, because Colleen would laugh at that so hard. And so she's making me laugh. So just came.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the last thing I'll say about this part is that you know, when people say like, be really specific, I will only take you in the form of a yellow hot dog car crossing Lake Avenue at 4 p.m. Like, you're going to put those kinds of rules on the unfettered universe? Like, fucking dare you. But the willingness, engaging with that longing, like, show me how you're still here. Okay. Show me us. Show me something, you know, whatever the feeling is, and don't worry so much about the form it takes.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 Thank you.
You're welcome. Janet.
Hello, this is my first time here.
Welcome.
My name is Janet and I'm from the Boston area. And yeah, I'm really glad to be here. And I just want to say also that your book has been a tremendous help to me. My wife died 5 months ago. It's 22 weeks. And we've been together 23 years. And so I do have support, and I meet with a death doula, and I also meet with I also have a therapist I've been seeing for a while. And there's a couple of things going on for me. I think they're related. The first thing I've just become aware of lately is I just feel like I feel a sense that the connection is like fading. I feel like Karen has turned more into like a photograph than the presence that used to be here. But at the same time, and what my real question is that I feel like I'm participating in silence around me. Like I have friends and I have support. I'm in recovery. I have a lot of support in my recovery groups and stuff. But I'm not, I mean, I look at my calendar and I'm busy and stuff, but I'm not talking about, no one's asking, and I'm also not initiating talking about her or about how I'm really doing. And you know, I've always been such a trooper, you know, I've always been like try to do everything really well. And I feel like I'm sort of slipping back into a little isolation and a little of that. And I was thinking today that it might be helpful to have like just some specifics of language, of like what to say and how to say it, because I'm really hurting. And I feel like I feel like I'm participating in it, but I don't quite know how to. I mean, it would, you know, I had especially at the beginning, just a lot of support and a lot of calls and a lot of meals and a lot of help. And now it's just really quiet. And so just trying to figure out how to keep it, you know, how to keep it out, how to keep myself out there, how to encourage people to interact with me around this. And you know, I know that Karen had a lot of friends who are grieving too, you know, a lot of the friends are still grieving, and she was in a lot of communities, and there's a lot of sadness, but it's 5 months and we're all getting quiet. And I just feel for me like it's not good. And it's also, I feel very lonely. And yeah. And so that's why I'm here today, to talk and to hear what you know, what you might suggest around that. Thank you.
I'm so glad you're here. Yeah, I really relate to that sort of strong stoic, I will do it myself, and the work that it takes to disarm that. And I love how you described, like, I can feel myself putting that armor back on, and I know that I don't want to, but I don't know how not to. Yeah. And 5 months, man, 5 months is nothing, right? It's so, to the outside world, so much time has gone by, but like, this just happened. You built a life together and communities together, and 5 months is barely a vacation, right? Yeah. I love what you said about Karen, right? And the relationships she built and the communities that you built together and that there's so much sadness. I think what happens is everybody's afraid to upset somebody else. Everybody's afraid to bring something up because they're not sure that they should, so nobody does, right? People don't want to upset you, so they don't say anything. And you feel like, why is nobody talking to me? I guess they don't want to, so I'm not going to bring it up. So nobody's getting their needs met, but everybody, many people long for the permission to connect, to say things, to talk about it. So what do we do? Choose the people, the relationships that you want to try this with. You don't have to do this with everybody. But I love what you actually said, which was, here's what I notice. So let's say you go to somebody who you have experience with being able to have real conversations, being able to hold that space together and be a decent human, right? Just going to this person and saying, you know what I've noticed is that I really miss talking about her. And it's been 5 months and I'm not sure how to bring it up. I'm not sure how to get into it. And I just know that I'm feeling really alone in this and I don't know what to do about it. I don't know how to talk about this together, right? Presenting the I don't know instead of having to have, here's the script I'm going to do with these people, right? I think we can take that step outside of it and go to people that we have a relationship with, that we've established that trust and that connection with, and say, I don't know how to talk about this, but I know that I want to. Can we talk about that? Yeah. There's something in the therapy world that we call the process conversation, which is a conversation about how we're doing this instead of a conversation about what we're doing. So the difference here is you don't want to go to a friend and say, I noticed that you've stopped talking about it and you're doing this and I need you to do this. That's like a transactional relationship. Not always a bad thing. If you need somebody to do the dishes, you need to tell them I need you to do the dishes, right? But what I hear you asking for and longing for is, can we talk about how we're living this? Can we talk about how we're all holding her absence? Because I notice that I'm feeling disconnected from you and I don't want to. And I notice that I feel really lonely inside missing her and I don't want to be like that. And I don't know what else to do differently, right? This is why safety in relationships is so important, because that is a really vulnerable thing to do. I need this and I don't know how to ask for it and I don't know how to do it. Will you be unsure with me? Yeah. Mm-hmm. What I love about that is some people, many people, wish that they could say that, start that, ask that, and they're relieved, right? It's like we're naming the elephant in the room and we're saying, can we talk about the elephant? What can happen is that you bring that up. I would love to talk about this, right? And they say, what are you talking about? Everything is fine. Like, it's been 5 months. I don't want to talk about it right now. That's really good information for you, right? That means, okay, not I shouldn't talk to anybody about this, but I shouldn't talk to this person about this, right? Where else might I bring this question? Where else can I lean into this? Yeah.
And I also say that there's a whole number of people that I know from, like, you know, my support system that never spent much time with her. And yet they know me. And I'm also, that feels like I wonder if the words would be different, because I also feel in those areas, I mean, in that, like, people often ask me how I am and I just like brush right by it, you know, or I like get to whatever's going on with them. And so if there's a difference with that group, I feel like that's really helpful, what you just said about the people where we know are together.
Yeah, that's a great question. So broadly speaking, I would say the same thing. You don't want to open a process conversation with somebody that you haven't done that before, or that doesn't feel safe enough to do. Just because they didn't know her doesn't mean you can't say, you know, I've been thinking about this a lot, like how hard it is to live this, to hold on to this grief. And I notice that you ask me how I am and I appreciate it. And I tend to skip right over it. And I think the thing is I don't know how to answer that question. But I want you to know that I really appreciate you asking me. I'm just not sure how to answer. You want to sound like you and not like me, right? But like, let's talk about, I recognize that you're asking me and that my response is telling you that I don't want to talk about it. And really what my response is telling me is, I don't know how to talk about this. Yeah, I've never had to do this before, right? So we're letting some air into the relationship. I think what very often happens is we miss each other because we're so worried about doing it wrong that people do nothing. And that can be you as the central griever, and it can be the friend over here is trying to be supportive. Like, I don't know how to do this correctly, so I'm not going to do it at all. I don't want to screw this up, so I'm not going to say anything, right? And so we're missing each other. And it really is this act of relational bravery to be able to say, I wish I could do this differently. It feels off to me and I don't know what to do. Can we talk about that? Like, that is such a brave relational power move. Yeah.
I love that relational bravery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really what it takes, right? And you know this from just a little bit that you opened with, right? Like, I have been so accustomed in this life to just like getting the shit done and being this. And I learned to do things differently. And I noticed that I'm going back to the old ways that I knew to survive this world. And I left that world for a reason, right? So you, just by saying that little bit and just by sharing that you're in recovery, you know about bravery, you know about risk, you know about vulnerability, you know about the rewards and the depth that comes with speaking into that space, right? You won't always get the response you want from others because others may not be ready, but that that longing, that seeking, that asking into it, I think is it's really important, right? I think we can also think about emotional sobriety, relational sobriety. There are things that I used to do to relate to this world that no longer served me, and I've worked very hard to not lean on those tools, those habits anymore. And loss like this can test all kinds of sobriety. Yeah. So I think you can borrow from some of those tools.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really glad you're here.
Thank you. I am too.
Gotcha.
Hi there. Hi. Wow. It's my first time here as well. And gosh, it feels very moving, and I feel so sort of relieved to be amongst, like, identifying with everybody. And you know, your book has been carrying me through for the last 2-3 months. And I'm in London. It's really late. It's way past my bedtime, but I just wanted to hang on in there to be here, because it just feels really important. And funnily enough, I'm also in recovery, and finding it very hard to tap into my support group. So I've kind of gone isolating. I mean, I'm properly isolating in a way. But I'll give you a very, very brief background. So I was with my husband for 20 years, 2 kids. One is going to be 15 day after tomorrow. My daughter's about to be 18 in a month. And in August, out of the blue, boom, he's diagnosed with an unknown primary cancer, and died within 10 weeks. And I'm so traumatized. Like, I'm so traumatized, obviously, you know, and I didn't leave his side, and I watched him die, and I just feel like my whole world's imploded, and I'm holding it together for these 2 beautiful children of ours, you know. And we were together for 20 years, so happy. We just moved into like our dream home. Everything was great, you know, and he was the kindest soul, very gentle, all these things. And we got married 3 days before he died.
Mm.
And I just feel, all these feelings, and I, a little bit like Janet was saying, I've got all these support and stuff, but I cannot, I just feel like nobody gets it. Nobody gets it. Okay. And I've had a lot of loss and grief in my life. I've lost siblings, parents. I mean, I've had a lot, but this to me feels like it's just I have no words, actually. I have no words. And so what I'm really struggling with is it's only 3 months. So I know I'm like as raw as a I don't know what, okay? And it's this expectation of people thinking that, first of all, it has gone silent yet again. I mean, everybody was there and it was very dramatic and it was very traumatic. So there was like, I was held, I don't even remember, the first month after Norman died. I don't remember it. It's like I keep having little moments. And at the moment, I'm having like these flashbacks of the horrors of the hospital, of sleeping there, of like, no, I mean, just like the horrors. And also there's a profound beauty in my grief. I don't know if that makes sense. But I just feel so connected to him, and so like I love him more and more each day, practically, which is also kind of comforting, and but it's just this, I'm finding it so hard to communicate with people that I am not ready. I am not ready to go out. I am not ready to leave my house. I walk my dog, who's saving my life every morning, because it makes me get up.
They do that.
I walk, yeah, and my kids, and that's about it. And I just briefly want to just, and actually, you've said it, Megan. You've said so many tools that I'm like, okay, of what, and I just have this thing with my sister where she's dealing with my mum who has Alzheimer's. So she's like today on the phone going, well, I am dealing with, and so now I feel guilty that I'm not doing enough. I can't do anything.
Mhm.
I barely cook for my kids, and I'm really making an effort, and they're falling apart too. And it's just, I don't want to implode on anyone. It's just trying to explain, that this is like, the speed at which everything has gone. I don't know who I am. I don't know anything. Anyway, so it's kind of, I mean, I was thinking, oh my God, what's my question? I can't even remember what my question is. Oh,
I can hear some questions in there.
thank you.
10 weeks. 10 weeks, you said?
Well, so it took 10 weeks from diagnosis to
10
him
weeks
dying,
from
and now we're
diagnosis to
3
death.
months since he
Now it's
died.
just been 3 months. Okay.
Yeah,
It is unreasonable
yeah.
for you or anyone to think that you could go through the entire dissolution of a universe and come back as the best project manager ever and keep everything sorted. That is unreasonable. Whether you're thinking you should or other people are thinking you should, that's unreasonable. You said it seems like people don't get it, and they don't. They don't, and they can't. They can't get it because they aren't you and they aren't living it. It's like trying to describe the ocean to somebody who has lived in the middle of the US, landlocked, never saw an ocean in their life, right? You can try to describe, but the ocean is visceral. You have to feel it, you have to smell it, you have to be there and know it. And the same thing with what this is for you. There is no way to describe it to make somebody get it, right? Some people will try, they'll fail, but some people will try anyway. Some people just refuse to get it, and they're going to tell you that you're doing it wrong, but we can just make those people go away because they don't matter, right? But the same thing that we were talking about with Janet, right? Like if there are people in your life who you have leaned on before, who you've got some respect and trust built up, to be able to say, I know you can't know what this is like for me, and I can't describe it to you. And I'm not very good at asking for what I need because I don't know what I need. I appreciate that you're trying. And I wonder if we can talk about some things that feel really helpful for me and some things that don't. right? You're opening up a conversation of, can we talk about how we're doing this? Because you can pull a classic couples therapy move here where we start with our relatedness, we start with our connection. I know that you love me and I value our friendship so much, and this is really hard for me and I don't know how to do it, and I know you don't know how to do it either, and you're doing the best you can. Can we talk about what I need and what might feel more helpful for me than the things that you're doing, right? You can say that a little bit more clearly, right? But I think that it's okay to speak about the chasm between us, of you can't know what this is like for me, so stop pretending that you know what I need and start asking me instead. And from your perspective, from the griever perspective, putting down that burden of trying to get people to understand what it's like to be you, because they literally physically can't.
Yeah.
They
Makes
just
sense.
can't, right?
Mm.
And even within your own family unit, right? You're all grieving one person, but you're all grieving somebody different.
Yeah.
You're grieving your partner. Each kid is grieving their dad. Everybody's grieving somebody different. It's a really tricky place to be in as a parent, because you want to keep things normal for your kids. You want to be solid and stable for your kids. And at the same time, if you present this, everything's fine, one, that's not sustainable. And two, what you're demonstrating is the way we deal with horrendous things is we suck it up and we get shit done. Is
It's
that
hard
really?
though, because with my daughter, she keeps
Yeah.
saying to me, I can't bear to see you crying all the time. So I'm like,
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah. So there are boundaries here. It's not that we like dissolve in front of the kids, but it's also to be able to say, I hear that. I hear what you're saying. It's really hard for you to see me crying all the time. And I will do my best that if I feel a big wave of emotion coming up, I'm going to excuse myself. I won't always be able to do that, but I want you to know that I hear you, that it's hard for you to see this.
Yeah.
What I can't do is pretend that I don't cry a lot.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's so different.
Mm.
That's so different and respects both of you and the space between you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. To be able to hear that and say, thank you for feeling safe enough to tell me that.
Yeah.
I love that you can tell me that. Right. That says a lot about your relationship, that she can say, fucking stop it.
Stop it.
Right. But we can talk about what we each need and what feels overwhelming and where the lines are, but we're not going to talk about you're not allowed to feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's the same thing we do when kids are little. Like, you get to be angry. You don't get to kick the dog and punch a hole in the wall when you're angry. Let's find some other ways to deal with this.
Mm.
Right. Your kids are older, but the Dougie Center, DOUGY.org, has some really helpful guidelines, tools, things for families dealing with grief. I love them. I send everybody who's part of a family there. They have some resources for older teens too. I think they even have I think my friend Jana, who is one of the programmers there, made a grief workbook or journal or something for teens. So they do have a lot of stuff. They really know what they're doing.
Thank you for that.
These sorts of things. But being together as a family in this, like, the best thing that you can give your kids is boundaries and permission.
Yeah.
Role modeling that this is really intense and none of us know how to do this. And here's what you can expect from me. I'm not going to hide my feelings. I'm not going to do this perfectly. I will do my best to be somebody that you can lean on and come to. And sometimes I'm going to wobble.
Yeah.
And I need you to be able to tell me when my wobbling is too much for you. Right. And here's what I expect from you. I expect that, whatever it is, right? Your kids, I don't, but here's what I expect from you. One of the things I think we do with kids, and I certainly saw it with my own stepson, is that people around him would be like, he's not opening up. He's not talking about this. And what I always wanted to say back, and sometimes did, was, he's just not talking to you about it. Like, just because he's not talking to you about it doesn't mean he's not talking about it.
Yes.
Just not bringing it to your doorstep to deal with that. Right. What's important is not that they're coming to you as a resource, as a tool, as a sounding board, but that they feel like there's a net for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Mm.
And the last thing I'll say about this is the company of other grievers. I feel like the community of other grieving people has many of the same benefits as having a therapist. Like, I feel like everybody should have a therapist, like no matter what's going on in your life, even if your life is amazing, because the gift of having somebody to who is not in your life, and there are no consequences for saying whatever you need to say. Like, you could do this to your friend or whatever, but then you have to deal with it later. But with a therapist, you can just say whatever you need to say, and they don't care in the best possible way. And connecting and finding some solidarity and some validation and some support in a community of grieving people that, in the best possible way, don't care what you say and can hear it. Like, I just feel like that is how we survive this stuff.
Yeah.
Right? The validation you get from people who say, I cannot believe how horrendous people are being, thinking they're being helpful. And somebody else says, oh my God, me too. Like, it helps you feel like you are not alone in the crazy world. Right?
Yeah.
I think that's really powerful and helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Welcome. Thanks for staying up past your bedtime. I know what a commitment that
Go to
is.
bed now. Thanks.
All right, everybody. I'm going to leave. Speaking of connection, if you haven't had a chance to go through some of the comments, any of you who watch the replay of this, do you get to see the messages in the chats, or do you just get to see the video? Anybody remember? Yeah, I'll ask Mike. That's fine. But what I'm going to do, my battery's almost out of my laptop, but I'm going to turn off my camera and turn off my mic, and I'm going to give you like 3 or 4 minutes to scroll through the messages in case you missed something or you want to make sure you connect with somebody. So I'll leave that up for a couple of minutes unless my battery kicks out. And then I will see you all next week, next month. Time is meaningless. I don't know.
Thank you, Megan.
Bye, friends.
Bye.
Hi.
Thank you.